Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan, with a silent PH in the middle, and I'm joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Say hello, sir.
Hello, welcome
Yeah.
audience, welcome members, welcome
Welcome.
to October.
Oh my gosh, it is the best month.
Yes.
It's fall, it's
Mm-hmm.
birthday month,
Oh,
and it's
nice.
Halloween month.
Yeah.
My wife has decided, since Halloween's like a really awesome holiday for us. We really love dressing up, and since we can't actually like do Halloweeny things because of the virus and stuff, we're just gonna dress up like every day. So I think we have a total of like 25 costumes so far. And yesterday was a pineapple baby and pineapple dad, which was really
Nice.
cute. So giant pineapple. And it is Kids on Bikes month. Yes. Because I'm going to run my Kids on Bikes game,
So
which
are
we'll
like
talk
these
about.
pictures going up somewhere that people can
They're
see
they're
these
on
costumes?
they're on like our private social
Oh,
media, but I
okay.
guess
This
I
is for
should
family.
probably put them on Twitter, and I'll think about it. I could do some stuff.
Oh,
So
I
at
was
least
just
me in a
wondering.
pineapple costume, but yeah.
Yes. That'd be
But yeah,
very cool.
we have like oodles to talk about.
Oh
I
yeah,
feel like we
pretty
shouldn't
good.
have had this much to talk about, but there like a lot of stuff happened. In the worlds of D&D, including like a sage device, some errata that came up. I should announce this. So we unlocked memberships on the
Yay.
YouTube channel, and with memberships you can subscribe to the channel with money, and I think it's like $2, and you get like a little badge next to your name. The longer you follow, that badge like levels up. Do not feel like you need to. But I know that some people were like, oh, I want to like support the show and I want to do this. Patreon is probably still the best way to do that. But if you like having a little thing next to your name, and eventually custom emojis when I get around to making them, you can go ahead and do that. And it just helps us keep streaming. But the show will always be free and it'll always be available. And you can,
Yeah.
yeah, but
And I
yeah,
wouldn't
it's
say
awesome.
we leveled up. I'd say you guys leveled up. That you
Yes.
guys did it. So good job. We just kind of sat back and did the easy part, talking into
Yeah, the
microphones.
easy part. So that's cool, and that's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, Mr. Lucian?
Well, like we were talking just before show, there were a couple videos that come out. We had times in our busy lives to watch one of those, but we didn't get to watch all of them. But if you go over to the Dungeons and Dragons channel, their YouTube channel, they always put up some content throughout the week. A lot of times they might be showing campaigns that are running or games if you're into some of those shows and those characters. But we always kind of keep an eye out for things like Dragon Talk or Sage Advice with Jeremy. There is one out there on Frostmaiden and Tasha's, which is all the big rage because that's the next book. Almost in some ways, I think overshadowing Frostmaiden a little bit is that everybody's really ready for this Tasha's Cauldron
Yeah.
book. And so there's a Dragon Talk talking on that. I have not dived into it myself yet. Probably something I'll do a little bit later this afternoon. But I did drop into the group patrons one, which I really like because they kind of stole it from one of their other books and they're going to put it in and they're going to put some more into Tasha's Cauldron. They expanded it in a way. And some of the ideas that came out of it between, just him and talking to Greg Tito were really fun and cool for a dungeon master to think how you might fit that into your campaign or how you
Mm-hmm.
might work it, how it can be a part of your campaign, how it could start your whole campaign, how it could come in and out of the campaign at different times. So there was a lot of cool stuff going on. What did you kind of take from it as far as what you were watching?
Yeah. So they took this from Eberron, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like they also kind of defined it in the Acquisitions Incorporated book, because that's
Yeah.
really the same thing. Like your Ac Inc. is
The
your patron,
franchise.
yeah, and that franchise, and you level up with that franchise, and you get to do stuff with it, and they're kind of doing the same thing. So it really keeps a group as a whole, and I like that because you're not individually leveling up with your individual things. You guys are a team. And yeah, you might have your backstory where you're like, I'm trying to find the person that murdered my father and da da da. But at the same time, all of you together are like, we need to help this kingdom. And when we do, we'll get this tower. And we want this tower because, and everything kind of, you level up with that patron.
Yeah.
The one thing I took away from it is they were saying, or one of the things is they were saying that if you don't do what your patron does, then that can quickly change into a rival.
Yeah.
Or an antagonist or a villain. And so I like the idea of like, okay, we're going to start working for this guy. And then maybe by level 10, they're like, oh, this guy's a lich. He's actually been manipulating us to do all this other stuff. And then the rest of the adventure is like, now we set up all of these things for him. We have to turn around and combat those to try and like, and or maybe their reputation is sullied because it is like, you've been working for this guy, like, oh, we don't want you here. So that's kind of cool. And then going back to Xanathar's stuff, so they introduced like, you know, you can have story rivals and stuff in Xanathar's and things like that. And this is nothing new. It's kind of interesting that they're showcasing it because like, I mean, Acquisitions Incorporated did it, but like everybody's been doing that. It's the kingdom who is like, I hire you to go do this because I need adventurers, and or I'm the dwarf miner that has to get the Snurfeblin out of my mines so that I can keep mining. I need your help to do this. But expanding it in a kind of leveling system capacity is kind of cool, which will go into my
adding mechanics to it. Really.
Yeah, which will go into my Bardic inspiration later. It's all gonna come full circle here.
Yeah, and as you're talking about it, even reminded me that's how Colville's campaign was going, where they were a mercenary company and they were looking for a patron in a new city that they had escaped to because they left this war that was going on across another continent. They just need a new place to go. So they're a mercenary company and they have to find a patron because they're mercenaries. Who are they going to work for? And it kind of feeds into that, that storyline and makes it a little more cohesive. I think gives you more reason why weird people are together when you might not think that they're like, if you all grew up on the same block of a city, it makes sense that you all of a sudden go out and adventure together or something. But this weird thing about, you've got one dwarf from the Hammerfall Mountains, you've got an elf from the deep wood, and you've got a drow from underground who's recently come up, and then you've got an Aarakocra from Chult. How does that really all come together sometimes? Yeah. Sometimes we gloss over those things so much that it's just like, we just want to get into playing. We'll just get past that. We'll just say it happened. We're not going to worry about it. We're just going to keep going. But this allows you not to just bypass that part of the story. It can really become a cool, fun part of the story, is that you have a patron that's brought you together. It's somebody who's seeked out different people with different skills, or you're a group of people that have a specific skill set and you get hired by people, and part of the story is about who's hiring you and why they're hiring you and how that's going on. And for a DM, you can still have your regular kind of campaign ideas, but this can be something that comes in and helps you get out of sticky points. Like the campaign starts to slow down. It's taken a left turn. And you don't know what you're going to do after this. There's like, you've gotten the stories to a certain part and then you're just like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. It reminds me of a part where you were in your home campaign. I think it was just after the pyramid, they beat it. And you were even talking in some of the shows about, okay, now what I do, this is where I had planned up to, this is where I thought we were going to get to, but I really haven't planned out their whole trip home yet. I know they want to go home, but I don't know their home, so something like that is a good place to maybe can throw in this whole idea, and maybe they get hired by a patron to do certain things that starts pushing them home or something, so it starts to bring it up again. And not even like hired, like it could be somebody who has like monetary, like, I need your skills, but it also could be like, you're the chosen ones. Sure. And I think about Final Fantasy, like, you're the warriors of light, like, this is your destiny. And in the case of that home campaign that I haven't ran for a year because of this virus stuff and the baby, but like that home campaign, you're absolutely right. Like, that a patron is exactly what they need. And maybe that's a deity. Maybe that's the Raven Queen, another good one, who introduces themselves, and it's like, oh no, and it doesn't have to be like the Raven Queen, but it could be a soothsayer that is like, I was foretold, I saw you coming in a vision, and the Raven Queen has plans for you. And then they have to decide, like, do we believe this person? Like, is the Raven Queen, and so there's good dynamic there. But they were saying like a patron could be like a dragon, or a company, a king, there's a deity, which is like a big one, that it could be just like, no, like we're doing this in favor of that, which kind of also ties back to I want them to do the deity specific stuff that they did for Theros. But for the Forgotten Realms. And then as I'm saying that, I'm pretty sure somebody on the DMs Guild has already made this. So it's like, you could be a thief that follows the god Mask
and you don't follow him in name only. You actually, like, if you follow the laws of Mask, you get cool bonuses, which is kind of cool. And that could be fun too. Like, if that deity is your whatever, then there's epic boons that you can give out to your players and stuff. So
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to think about, or just to listen into. We'll see it when it pops out in Cauldron, just because most groups have drive, and most groups have players that are willing to push the narrative a certain way because they have an idea and they want to do stuff. And and as a DM, you kind of react to those things. But every now and then they stall out and they have no motivation to do anything. They don't really know where they want to go. And they're kind of looking to you like, I don't know, what are we doing? Where's the quest that's supposed to pop up and tell us what to do? And you're like, no, guys, this is sandbox. You can do whatever you want. This world's all open for you. And they're like, all right, but where's the quest we're supposed to do? They're looking around and what do you want us to do, Jordan? Where's this guy? We know you're going to give us a guy that's going to tell us what to do. Yeah. So I think sometimes if they get stuck, it's good to have something like, and I like the dynamics of that idea of these patrons that are maybe working with each other. There's other patrons working against. So there could be some rivals in that way. There could be somebody tries to steal you from one patron, telling you, like you just said, hey, you're working for a lich. You're doing all this stuff. You shouldn't do that. Why don't you come work for me and let's fix all these problems you guys have caused? What about a campaign that's like that? Like half of it, they think they're working for somebody good and they're just wrecking the countryside by doing it. And then somebody tells them what all their actions have really done. And the rest of the campaign is going back to fix all of the stuff they've caused, not knowing what they've caused by the things they've done. It's like, go smash this stone dam. That's all I want you to do. And like, okay, we'll go destroy that. Here's your 500 gold. What does that actually cause? And now how do you go back out and fix it type thing? So could be some fun stuff in there.
No, it's good. I think it's interesting to talk about this because for some people they kind of scoff and they're just like, well, that's a no-brainer. Like you should just do that. That's the basics of storytelling. But a lot of new DMs are just like, well, I didn't know that, or I do find this helpful. I'm working on my Kids on Bikes game that I'm going to run this Friday, and I was very stumped. And yesterday I'm just like, oh my gosh, I got to write this. I've got a week. Like, what are they even doing? I don't even know. And my friend messaged me and he's like, really excited to play with you on Friday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. And I picked up this book called Strange Adventures Volume 2. This is a printout, but I bought the PDF. And this was in the deluxe version of Kids on Bikes, but all it is a bunch of like, here's a town and here's a bunch of weird stuff happening in the town. Like, here's hooks for you. Yeah, just and grab then one. You take that. And so I was reading through this last night, and within, I don't know, 30 minutes, I had my whole story. I'm like, I just have to like plot out where I want them to go and help kind of define the world. But like, I've got NPCs and oh yeah, that's a great idea. So, and it's not in there. Like, I'm not stealing it directly. I was just inspired by it comes from I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. That sounds great. And so now I'm going to have this cool adventure. And group patrons are like that, I guess, is my point. Coming back full circle. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like Bardic Inspiration's like that too, because like when you look at something creative, because you're looking at creative things, you may not even choose any of those, but you creatively start to work now. Like your brain is starting to churn through creative stuff. And not that you chose anything that was already there, but your brain's like, here's an idea for it. And you're like, you latch onto it. And you're like, yeah, Dune, this planet where there's spice and worms. And you're just like, whatever it might be that pops out. So that's what I like about that. Just looking at, creative stuff that then generates more creativity in yourself because you're looking at other creativity. Yeah.
Man, that Dune trailer too. Whew,
Dude, my wife's all about it, boy. She can't wait. You think it'll be in theaters, or is that going to be like a...
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I still missed the... this is a movie podcast, but I'll talk... I love movies.
We'll do another one of those.
Yeah. Baldur's Gate 3 is out soon?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be out the 30th, right? Of last month.
Early access. Yep.
Early access,
and I just went and checked Steam this morning. They said October 6th. 3 days, people, unless they push it.
Yeah, so they might.
Don't. Lucian in 3 days will be playing some Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm going to be excited. And if we are playing it in 3 days, I'll be talking about it next week for sure.
Yeah, there is a IGN article that I found this morning that says all of the different races you can be. And they'll probably have more after it launches, but it looks like you get humans and Githyanki, which is interesting. And the whole thing's going to have a Githyanki kind of spin on it, I think. But that is not a 5th edition heavily defined race. Like we haven't had like a lot of adventures with Githyanki, and they're cool. Don't get me wrong, but the Githzerai, same thing, yeah. But like we haven't had a Astral Sea or a Limbo like running around with the Gith. So I thought it's interesting that they're in here, but they're heavily tied to the Mind Flayers, so it might be.
You say that, and I have a Gith in my campaign.
Well,
it's a character, and he loves it. But yeah, so like we've been getting lots of Gith.
But humans, Githyanki, elves, drow, half elves, and you could be like a half drow if you wanted to. Dwarves, halflings, and tieflings, and all of those kind of have like subs, except I guess for the Githyanki and humans. But like elf, you can be a high elf or a wood elf. And then drow, you could be a Saldarin drow or a Lolth drow. So basically, you can be like, I want to be like a Corlon good drow, or I want to be like another evil drow kind of a thing. And so... Oh, and the tieflings, you can be an Asmodeus tiefling, a Mephistopheles tiefling, or a Zariel tiefling, which is kind of interesting.
Nice.
And I'm sure that affects your stats and what other abilities you might have for whatever you're interested in. But no, the game looks cool. Like I'm excited to check it out. I don't think I'm going to buy it like the first day, but yeah.
I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be there.
My idea too is I want to tackle it in a couple of ways. I want to tackle it as one is a playthrough with a normal playthrough, but then I want to try to make weird characters and weird combinations of stuff to see what the system lets you actually create character wise, like what kind of classes and subclasses are going to be in it, and what kinds of things are we going to have access. Obviously it's not going to be the full gambit of everything we got. They got to have DLC or other updates down the road, so they'll leave some stuff to add in later on. But I'm excited because I did play a little bit of Divinity Original Sin 2, which is a pretty popular game, very similar to it, isometric turn-based combat, storyline driven game, but has lots of sandbox elements to it so that you can really create some crazy characters. And a lot of that community gets into those types of games, and they create things that are really fun. Like there'll be like speed runs, they'll do challenges where maybe you have to do the whole thing with just one character, or they'll do some weird only plant-based something or something like that. They always come up with something cool, and there's lots of ways to challenge yourself through some of those things. So I'm excited to see it. I mean, just the opening movie had me hooked. When we saw the trailer drop for that, I've been hooked since I've seen that. So I'm excited.
No, story-wise, it's going to be great. I think. Well, I like the Mind Flayers have a very interesting history. So if they're going to be the main antagonist, it's going to be
such
fun.
a great bad guy too.
Revamped Curse of Strahd comes out this month. For those of you who are interested, I do not think I will be picking up a copy, but I do want to get those WizKids Strahd miniatures. And I think that's something I'm going to try and
now you've ran Curse of Strahd, right?
I have not.
Oh, you've only read it.
I've read it several times. Both the older version before it became a 5th edition thing, and then I read through Curse of Strahd, and I made a YouTube video of campaigns explained, where I was trying to go through these campaigns and be like, this is why you should run it, or this is the lore you need to know to run it. And it's cool. Like, I found a website where you can run Strahd as a one-shot. Everyone starts at like level 7 or 8, and you kind of skip the whole getting to know the world of Barovia and jump right into the castle. And it's like, your job is to find these artifacts and defeat Strahd. And it can be a lot of fun. And it turns the whole adventure into like a 4-hour, 5-hour kind of thing. So it's a good Halloween kind of thing to do. And I feel like with how big that area is, this is why Ravenloft became popular, is because you could rerun it. And it's like, it's so big. And this time the artifact you need is in this area. So it's, I don't know, like a roguelike game almost, where you kind of go through and you're like, see how far you can get. And then the dungeon regenerates in a way, and then you go through it again. And so, I don't know. I still have wanted to run it on Halloween, and it has not happened yet.
I know a friend of our show, Indoor Adventure, I believe, has ran it on his channel. So I wonder if he'll be one of the guys that'll buy the new one and maybe play through the revamped, or I'll have to ask him at some point, unless he's in chat. He might say in chat if he's out there. But
yeah, their Strahd was a girl, which was kind of fun.
That's fun.
When they were like, we're gonna swap Strahd out, and I was like, that's cool.
I could see Strahd switching back and forth. That type of character could easily be somebody that very fluid.
It was cool.
I could see that.
I caught a couple episodes. They do a good job over at the Indoor Adventures. Did you hear about this Sage Advice that came out? They updated the Sage Advice.
I heard about it because obviously Twitter blows up every time something like that happens, and they pick out the little pieces that annoy them to no end. And then you see the Twitter threads start about that. So I did see a few of them. I saw the ones that you marked, which we were laughing at a little bit while playing D&D.
It was, and so Sage Advice, if you guys don't know, is basically official answers from Wizards of the Coast on various rules. And so people will ask questions like, how does this actually work? And it cracks me up with how specific they are about certain things where I'm like, this must have come up in just like a really random thing. You should let the DM just decide how this happens. But for some reason, it's made its way into Sage Advice.
Or it's never come up, but it's somebody that's just reading the rule.
Oh, it could be that too.
Their theory crafting.
Yeah.
What happens then?
So the ones that I thought was interesting, well, actually the big one that kind of affects a lot of people is a short rest is supposed to be like 1 to 3 hours, or maybe 2 to 3 hours. I always thought it was 2 to 3 hours. A short rest.
I always thought it was an hour.
Yeah, but maybe it's an hour. And during a short rest, you have to just be like resting. But a lot of people do short rests where they're casting ritual spells for
light activity.
Right? Light activity. But a lot of them would cast ritual spells. Specifically, I think of Identify, where it's like, okay, we defeated the monster. Here's a bunch of magic items. We want to take a short rest, but I also want to identify all these magic items. Well, rules as written, you can't take a short rest and do ritual spells. Ritual spells don't count as light activity. So if you want a short rest, you have to do that. Or if you want to do that, or you take 2 short rests in a row. Some DMs would let you do that. But I think back to my Hot Springs Island game that every time they took a short rest, they were in danger, and I would roll to see if a random encounter would happen. So the more you stack that, you're like, oh, do we want to take another short rest, or So that it was kind of interesting that you can't.
I think I'm okay with that one because you're trying to get away with not spending a spell slot, but you are doing something that is more than just watching and maybe sitting, but you're, like you could be sitting and eating, you could be cleaning something. There's lots of things you could be doing that's still considered light activity, because I've seen some other things that talked about light activity, but I could understand why maybe ritual. I think I'm trying to think in our games, I think our people always did it like their identifies and stuff first, and then they took their long rest.
Yeah, and that's kind of what... Or
short rest or whatever.
Yeah, and I've got 2 wizards in Rod of 7 Parts, and so they're like, we want to ritual cast this, and I'm like, okay. And since it's 10 minutes, I let them do that, and then we have a scene, and then we take a short rest. Yeah. And so it's honestly how you want to do it, but like that was a big takeaway, I guess. The other 2 ones that I thought were funny is a polymorphed or wild-shaped creature with fewer than 100 hit points is, if that creature is targeted by powered word kill, you instantly die. You don't revert to your other form. You don't. It is like, no. The way the spell is written, that creature dies, and since you are that creature, like you are, so that's kind of a wombo combo too. Like if you can polymorph the enemy into a cat, and then power word kill it, and it's just dead. I was like, that ruling was a little weird, because I'm like, okay, well if that makes sense for me as a wild shaped druid. I want to be careful of the wizard who has this, but then I keep thinking of like, if I've got 2 wizards in my group, which I do, they get to a certain point, they could just, we're just going to get rid of the boss.
You're a chicken.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's so many level 0 enemies that you could turn it into. So,
well, and I think why somebody would even ask the question, because I used to cast polymorph quite a bit with my wizard. I love the spell. I think the spell reads that once the form you've switched into hits 0 hit points, then you revert back. So they're saying, so somebody's going to say, well, you just power word killer me, so now I'm hit point 0. But that's not necessarily what power word kill says.
Exactly.
I don't think. I'd have to go back and read it. I think it just says if you don't have enough hit points, you're just dead. At that point.
Yeah, I'm really that was interesting. We'll see where it goes. And then the other funny one, and I'm like, where did this even come up? Like, why is somebody theory crafting this? Is that somebody asked, like, does a sphere of annihilation, can it enter a Leomund's tiny hut? And it was like, what? And so the official ruling is that if the 2 interact, the hut is destroyed. So I was like, well, that's kind of funny. And then we were talking in my Discord about it because people, or maybe it was a Saturday morning D&D Discord, but people were like, well, and then can't you like cast Dispel Magic on a tiny hut because it is a spell? And I was like, oh yeah, you don't need to be a DM running around with a Sphere of Annihilation to like just be like, oh, you guys, you're resting in there. Like you could just cast Dispel Magic on it. So I don't know. Maybe
if you
maybe
could
that
see it.
maybe that came in. Maybe, I don't know, or maybe someone was trying to use a Leomund's tiny hut to protect themselves from a Sphere of Annihilation or something. But
yeah, well, and I always
yeah.
wondered about those rules where they talked about dimensional spaces meeting each other. So what happens when you brought the portable hole into Leomund's tiny hut, or you brought the bag of holding, which has its own interdimensional space, and Leomund's hut is its own extra dimensional space. Do they destroy each other? What happens? That kind of stuff. But I think that's I believe the DM should have fun with and scare their players, but not necessarily destroy their players when they stumble.
I think it would be because like to just have the spell disappear, that's not interesting to me.
No.
But to have it cut into it, and then when you recast it later, it still has that cut. Like, but
there you go.
Like that would be cool. And it's like, but my spell hasn't changed. It's like, but like the fabric of that spell has been just, like, I don't know, like then that's
the space you're tying into all these times you cast it has been affected by what you did.
And so as you move forward with this game, that's a whole quest to try and repair your tiny hut. Like fun. I love that. That would be really cool.
Or you get to claim a different dimensional space spot. You're like, I screwed this pocket up. I need this one over here now.
And now those beings from the other plane are upset with you because it's like, you like cut up our house. So
Bardic inspiration right there for everybody.
Oh man, that's cool. So yeah, those three were weird because I always feel like I'm like, that's just DM discretion, but we do have official rulings on it. So maybe it was also something that came up in Adventures League and with Adventures League and group play like that. Not group play, but standard play. Anyway, like the official play.
Adventure League.
Adventure League. You want those actual Wizards of the Coast rulings because you might have a DM that's just like, I'm gonna blow a bunch of dragon acid on you and kill you instantly, and then your poor drow is just gone forever, and it's sad.
Yeah, welcome to the Tomb of Annihilation.
There was also some errata updates, and we knew they were going to do this, but they basically said the monstrous races, which are orcs and kobolds and goblins and things like that, they were going to update or change them. And so Volo's Guide to Races, or Volo's Guide to Monsters, the races in that book got a errata change. And I was a little sad because I like kobolds a whole bunch, and all they did to kobolds is remove the -2 strength. So you used to get +2 dex, -2 strength, and then sunlight sensitivity and all this other stuff, and this ability called grovel. I thought they were going to get rid of grovel and make them more of a, like, I don't know, they have like something else
race?
going. Yeah, like something that they're not just like, well, I kind of have to play it this way because I have this ability that either I use and I don't know. But anyway, so they removed the -2 strength, but they didn't give them anything extra. So they just have +2 dex. And then orcs, they removed the -2 intelligence and changed their the ability that used to give them intimidation now gives them you can choose between animal handling, nature. So it's the Eberron dwarf or Eberron orc and the Wildmount orc. Those were different than the orc in Volo's Guide to Monsters. So which the Volo's Guide to Monsters orc is really more of like a Forgotten Realms orc, which they are just evil, dumb creatures. And this one was more like, no, orcs are just more kind of, I don't know, I always think of them like Klingons or something. Like they're advanced in a different way, and they're a warrior race, but they're like, they're just kind of over here. And so they make them more like in tune with nature, and that's why they're nomadic, and that's why they have these things. So that's official as well. If you have the original books, you can still obviously play those however you want. But going forward, they've removed some of those. So yeah. The negative stats, which kind of whatever.
Yeah, anything that had the negatives on them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah. Oh, and everyone, I made some videos about Vecna and Sigil, and everyone was upset that I pronounced Sigil as Sigil instead of Sigil. I understand that the word is pronounced Sigil, but in the world of D&D, it is pronounced Sigil. And the multitude of comments I've gotten from a past video where I pronounced it Sigil, and everyone was like, "You're pronouncing it incorrectly." So this time I pronounced it correctly, and everyone's like, if I hear you say Sigil one more time, and I'm like, "That's how you pronounce it." I'm to the point where I'm just about to make a solo video, and I'll just link that video in every comment that people are like, "What?"
We're just gonna change it. Sigile.
But yeah, and one guy was like, "Oh, in Planescape Torment they say Sigil, and so you're saying it wrong." And I'm like, "What?" And I looked and I found audio files, and I don't. They say Sigil in that video game, and I'm like, "What is what?" So that was something that was bothering me.
Internet experts.
But the Vecna series that I was working on, I finished, and I'm excited for October's overall series. We're gonna do another 3 or 4 part mini series on something cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, what else is happening in the world of D&D?
I just had a couple of quick things that I want to throw out there. Bunkers and Badasses is a role-playing game that you guys can pre-order right now. If you liked playing the video game from Gearbox, why am I spacing out? Borderlands 1, 2, or 3. I've loved all those games. In the game, in one of the download DLCs, they did Tiny Tina's, she runs a role-playing game inside the game.
That's right.
But you're playing through it as she's doing a role-playing game, and there's this whole storyline that you're playing, you know,
and this is
Bunkers and Badasses. Borderlands.
Yeah. So this is, they're actually
and then
making
so they said, you know what, let's just make the Bunkers and Badasses game. So it's out there. And they've got a funny little video if you go look for it. It's on pre-order right now. It's not quite out yet, but it will be soon.
Who are they working with to build this?
It says,
is it internal Gearbox, or did they hire a game?
No, they hired a game company, but not one I recognize. So
okay.
I'd have to check it out. So and then there was a couple Kickstarters. I saw some 5e campaigns that have been coming up recently. I just wanted to throw some out. One that's about to start is Erlin's Stolen Notes to Vila, and I thought that was cool. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those right. That one feels like one of the books that you might get like a Volo's Guide or this. So I thought that was a cool way for them to use that kind of naming convention. And it kind of seems like a nice horror, you know, campaign for you to, you know, kind of get yourself dug into. The artwork looked pretty good to it, and they're about to start. They haven't quite started yet, but it's coming. And then Heckna was a carnival horror setting, which made me think of the Matt Mercer early, is it second season, where they deal a little bit with a carnival or a I remember that they in the very beginning, when they're introducing their characters, they get to somewhere where there's a big tent and they're having to discover something. They do a big fight in there, and it made me think of carnivals inside a Dungeons and Dragons campaign could be quite fun. Or what if you're trying to chase down a carnival that's wreaking havoc across the countryside? So those kinds of things, I thought that might be fun if you're into that kind of setting.
Man, the art from this is amazing.
Yeah,
this Hecka thing, and it's doing really well. It's only got 5 days to go. If you guys are interested, not sponsored obviously, but they have well met their goal. They're almost at $500,000, so it's crazy.
So they're gonna, that one will, the last one I was gonna say, I don't know if this one's gonna actually get enough, but I loved the original picture that they show at the top of the screen for the Churn. And the Churn is a post-apocalyptic world for 5th edition, but fantasy and magic also coexist. And they have this beautiful picture of a FedEx plane that's crashed in a jungle somewhere. And it just is a very evocative picture. When I looked at it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to back this. It may not make it. They've been out there for a while. They haven't got enough publicity, but I love the artwork that they showed.
Yeah, the art in here is really good too. That's awesome. Okay. I like this bard with an electric guitar that's got powered by crystals. That's really cool.
Yeah, so some cool stuff.
I'll put the links down below into the thing, but you can Google those. Those are fun. A lot of cool fighting stuff coming out.
Yeah, any of the good Kickstarters you guys are finding or you're back, and go ahead and send a tweet to me or Jordan so we can keep up on them too, because I'd like to see all that. I don't want them to go by and I didn't see a good one that I might want to back. So let me know out on Twitter.
Yeah, and I'll throw them into our YouTube chat real quick. You can check those out. What was the first one? Oh yeah, that one. This one's not. This one's not available yet.
Nope,
Arl and
they're going to
Stolen
be starting
Notes.
soon.
So, but yeah, you can get notified. So, that's cool. That's cool. Well, speaking of nothing, segues, we're going to go to our wonderful part of the show, Bardic Inspiration. Oh, so exciting. So exciting. Yes, this is the part of the show where we talk about things that have inspired us, which kind of has been the majority of the show. We've just talked about all kinds of inspiring
We had 3 of them before.
yeah, what has inspired you, Lucian?
Oh, you're going to jump on mine. Well, I was thinking about a campaign where either every month or every week, you'd have to decide as a dungeon master, the world that they are on goes eternal night. And then it stays night for an extended period of time.
Oh, like 30
not
days?
Just, yeah,
like 30 days of night?
Maybe a 30 days of night.
And there's like vampires in the snow?
Fortnight. There you go. And then you have to survive it. And during that time, more stuff comes out that's definitely way more bad and powerful. So maybe definitely higher CR stuff, maybe lots of things. And what I like,
you hire Vin Diesel and you got Pitch Black, yeah?
Yes,
okay,
perfect. That was the movie I was thinking of.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I love that movie, Pitch Black.
It's a good one.
But the idea that I liked about it, and as you can see, it's a trope. It's not something that's completely revolutionary. But the idea that your campaign can have a portion where they're preparing for what's about to come, and you still can have some storylines and some quests that are going on because they need to get prepared, but they know the big night, the long night is coming, and then they have to survive the long night, and what happens with the long night, or how far are they going to get before the long night happens. And sometimes they don't get all the way where they need to, and they're stuck. And so there's lots of little cool things out there. The other thing that kind of you could morph this idea into, Netflix has done some shows where the end of the world has come, and it's been about, if you make any noise, these creatures come and kill you. So then there's that whole movie about everybody's trying to move through the countryside in silence so that nobody can hear them. And, there's ones where they can't see. There was another one that with Sandra Bullock where if you viewed them or you looked at them, something happened to you, you went crazy and you ended up killing you and yourself and everybody around you. So they put blindfolds around their heads, and they tried to make their way to safety. Those kinds of styles of movies were kind of what I was inspired here with, this idea of preparing to get somewhere or go somewhere because a really bad span of time is about to happen. So like an eclipse of night, maybe there's a certain, it could be an eclipse, could just be how the world rotates around the sun, could be a magical thing. Maybe it's the god of darkness takes over the world for 30 days and 30 nights, or, or maybe it's just a fortnight. Maybe it's 10 full days. Maybe it's, the great snowstorm comes, and it comes, once every 20 days or something. And then all of a sudden it's just pitch black. And then, you could really get into some cool Stephen King, Cthulhu, like the powers of evil are stronger and darker and more menacing during that time. And you have to use the time of daylight to prepare for that, to get ready for that kind of stuff. So I was thinking of
Frost Maiden, Rime of the Frost Maiden actually has Arl, the whole premise is that Arl has gone up. She's the goddess of winter, goes up, and she has used her magic to create the Aurora Borealis that keeps 10 towns and Icewind Dale in like a perpetual dark cold. So they're getting like an hour of daylight a day kind of a thing. And that's really why you're there. So yeah, it's similar. That's interesting.
Very cool. So I didn't take it from there, but that was the idea. And it was really, I was watching Pitch Black not too long ago, and I was making an idea.
Yeah, but like to prepare for something like that is fun.
And to know it's coming, to add the tension. It's coming. Yeah,
and I guess that's what I was going to try to say is like, hey, it's been 10 years. We're going to have what we call like the dark month. And it's going to be awful, and we can't see, and that's when all the monsters come out because the sun keeps them away, or maybe a magical shield goes down, and so everyone's like, how do we protect our town? How do should we go underground? What do we do? And so that's the preemptiveness of it is what is interesting and fun, and then seeing if your do your things hold up, and so your defenses basically.
If you're going to do a long span, you could go Game of Thrones, which is winter's coming. Yeah. So, which was the whole story was based on everybody was supposed to be preparing for the long dark, and nobody was. So, That could be another cool thing. But what about Jordan's Bardic inspiration? What did he have over this past week?
Yeah, so I a while ago, a long time ago, a friend of mine bought an RPG called Blades in the Dark, and it's an RPG and a setting. And I don't remember, they've since taken Blades in the Dark and made like system neutral versions of it, so you could use it to kind of play all these other different things. But it's a really cool system. We had a lot of fun. And the game, kind of like most games, it's just like, we got busy. But long story short, it's really, really fun. There is a mechanic in that game called progress clocks. And the reason I was reminded of it is I was rereading Teens in Space, which is a Kids on Bikes spinoff. And they specifically were like, we loved this mechanic from Blades in the Dark, so we're going to put it in our game in Teens in Space. And then I was thinking about that, and that correlates back to patrons in Dungeons and Dragons, this upcoming thing, and how you can use progress clocks for it. So the mechanic is you draw a circle, and depending on how difficult this is, and they encourage you in Blades in the Dark, like get a whiteboard and just like, I have a whiteboard, I should do it. But they're like, get a whiteboard and draw a circle. And then depending on how difficult it is, you create pie sections. So it could be 4 sections of this circle, and that's an easy one. It could be 6 or 8, like you just kind of keep drawing lines. And then it's not a physical timer, but it's a narrative timer. And so as people are going through, let's say your objective is to steal back the Maltese Falcon from the rich, wealthy guy, and he's having a party tonight. So it's not, you don't draw a clock for sneaking past the guards, but you do draw a clock for getting into, or getting the Maltese Falcon back. And every little step of the way, you've shaded in. So you as the game master are just like, okay, you snuck past the guards. Like, that's good. I'm going to shade in this area. And so players can physically see this and be like, oh my gosh, like we're almost at the prize. Or did something really bad happen? Like, oh, the guard saw you. Now you're going to shade in 3 sections of this clock, and you guys have a very small amount of narrative time to finish your mission. Or do you just want to abandon it as a whole? And from a patron perspective, Blades in the Dark is really good at saying, like, you can use clocks for very simple objectives or for bigger things. And I like this idea, and I've been toying with having like an actual whiteboard on my wall, so that I could draw like, okay, here's your building a bar or something in town. And it's like your patron's going to give you this tavern. You're going to be able to fix it up, but it's not quite there yet. And for the players to look at the wall and be like, oh yeah, we're like 75% complete narratively. It's kind of cool. So I was inspired by this. I actually want to try and use some of it in my Rod of 7 Parts game. And and since I have a whiteboard now, I might like start drawing on here, like this is where you guys are at. And then behind me, they can just see narratively they're doing really well or they're crunched for time and they have to make decisions now. And it's so simple, but it works really well, you know?
And I think if you're looking for more description on it, I believe it comes from the Apocalypse Engine, which kind of describes it more. So those games that are Apocalypse Engine games, many of them will have this clock mechanic in it. Adam,
it might be in there, but it's not an Apocalypse game.
No, I'm not. But I'm saying a lot of the Apocalypse games have that. They're called fronts.
Oh, okay.
But it's still drawn as a clock.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, but it's just a good way to describe
cool
what's happening. It is cool.
And I like it, and it's cool, and it makes me want to play more Blades in the Dark games. I should have Googled this earlier, but yeah, they have the game systems are called Forged in the Dark. So that's like their Apocalypse system baseline that you can then change and add on and stuff. But they have Blades in the Dark. They have Band of Blades. Scum and Villainy apparently uses the Forged in the Dark system, and that's a sci-fi one. And Girl by Moonlight is in playtest right now, according to this website. So that's going to be a magical girl one. So
yeah. That's the guy who wrote Blades in the Dark is good friends with the guy who wrote Apocalypse World, which is what Dungeon World was based off of. And they all talk
Yeah.
a lot with each other, and they share, kind of design ideas and
Mm-hmm.
mechanical ideas. And they've played games with each other for a long time, and they love each other's games. So when you kind of get it, that I feel like they're almost like a DCC group in
Uh-huh.
some ways. When you start to get in the Apocalypse and the Forge and the Darks and stuff, they're
Mm-hmm.
like their group. You have the DCC group, you have the Dungeons and Dragons group, you have the Pathfinder group. They're very similar to that. And when you get into that community and you watch some of those shows and some of the other games that have been built on that stuff, you get a good sense of the way their rules work. It's a very narrative
Mm-hmm.
game style. In some ways, rules light, not as crunchy as some other games, but definitely some fun, cool concepts that I love.
Yeah.
He writes some really good games. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
his name in my head, but
And it's a lot of narrative stuff, which is different
yeah,
from like we did. I think Blades in the Dark, we didn't actually do any combat. It was all
sneak
a
around.
the game revolves around heists, and so it's like, how do we obtain this? How do we get our objective, or how do we assassinate this person, or how you're hired to do these interesting things. And when I was just talking about Blades in the Dark, but one of the cool things about it is you go in with what you're prepped with, and you say, hypothetically, I have 5 things. And when you go and start the actual game, you come to like a locked door and you're like, oh, I have one of my hypothetical items is a pair of lockpicks. And so then you have a flashback scene where you guys are prepping and you get to be like, oh yeah, we need to have these lockpicks for this. And this guy is an expert lockpicker. So then you go forward and you can now roll using your lockpicks. And so it's kind of cool where you plot out how you're going to do it while you're doing it through these flashbacks. And it's a fun game. So, but
And
I like clocks. I want to use them later. So
yeah. John Harper was the guy who wrote. That's the name I was trying to remember.
okay.
And he just released a new game called Aegon. So he's done another new system. He did Blades in the Dark about 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah,
and now this is his newest one, which is supposed to be getting good reviews. So look up Agon, Agon. It's got a cool Greek helmet on it. Looks pretty cool.
Awesome.
And John Harper's super smart. He would put out, I know we're on a huge tangent here, but he would put out 1-page RPGs too.
Mm-hmm.
And I did one on my channel that was so fun. And it amazed me that you could write a role-playing game based on 1 page of rules and just go and have a really fun role-playing game. And I just thought, man, that guy is super smart.
Lasers and Feelings is like that, where it's just this one little card, and it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. Yeah. Speaking of games, we play D&D. Are you on level 12 of Dungeon of the Mad Mage yet? What's going on?
Yeah. There is a 2 in that number for sure.
Okay, so you're still on 2. All right.
Yeah. That's that at the very end of the Tuesday night session were my exact words. We still haven't found the stairs down yet. Apparently, level 2 is a very large area. We have covered great amounts of it, but we have no idea how much more we need to cover. But the thing I thought I would bring up, because it seemed like a relevant thing that other dungeon masters might run into, I was going to ask Jordan about it. Prisoners. Player parties taking prisoners, player parties, how they treat prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take the players as prisoners? This always seems to be, for me, a sticky point, because I don't ever want my game to devolve into true brutality, disgustingness, or going a little too far overboard on what people might do to other people to maybe get a piece of information or to make them do something they want them to do when they don't want them to do it. I kind of want to skirt around getting into the details of stuff like that. So when I play my games, I kind of let my players know up front that that's not, I don't really want to narrate the scene where somebody's tied to a chair and they're trying to extract information or anything. I don't find any reason to do it. I want all that kind of stuff. And that's just me. Now, other people are different. And we have, so what happened in Tuesday Night Game is we were able to subdue a bad guy and take him prisoner. And then they're dragging him around now. And they have some interesting ideas on what they're going to do with this prisoner. And so I'm waiting to see what's actually going to happen and what my DM actually allows and what my character might do and step in and not do. But what about Jordan? Does this ever happen in your games much? Have your players or campaigns take prisoners, been taken prisoner? How have you handled it as a dungeon master?
So you're asking, have my player characters taken
taken
prisoners
other
in the game.
Yeah.
Well, they have done interrogations and stuff, and I'm a big fan of skill challenges. And I'll just say, hey, we're going to turn this into a skill challenge. How do you get the information out? And so some of them will be like, well, I like rough them up a bit, and it takes the we're describing terrible things, and really it's just I want to use this skill to get this information or something. And so I'll say, this guy's real strong, like what do you want to do? And it's like, well, I want to rough him up. And it's like, okay, roll athletics, you succeed. So yeah, he's like, oh, you mean business, so what do you want to do? Well, I want to use intimidation. Okay, how do you do? Well, and so they're basically like, I want to use my skills in I just want to roll dice to see how it works. So we've done that for intimidation. As far as like prisoners, usually it's like, can we hand these over to, the people in charge? You're not in that situation because you're, in the Underdark. You're not in the Underdark. You're in the Undermountain.
Which I think would be kind of
it probably is. There's drow running around, let's be honest. So I don't know. When you were talking about it, I'm like, well, all you need to do is get a portable hole and throw all of your people in there, seal it up, open it up every 10 minutes for a new gush of air to come in or something, because they need air to breathe. But yeah. So I don't know.
No, we're dragging around with manacles of something, manacles of immobility or something that are kind of like a rod of
an immovable rod.
An immovable rod. Yeah. So, but it has happened in other parts of my campaign where they take somebody alive, and then one person wants to get pretty brutal, and then maybe a couple other people don't. And I always think, I want this to be game and I want it to be fun. I don't want it to get into thinking that hard about how you're going to try to do something like that. Whether you think it's justified, whether, whatever. I just but I like the idea that the skill challenge lets you abstract it a little bit more.
And I've also been straightforward with my players, because a lot of times you get into that role play scene and they're just like, well, I want to do like an insight check. And I like, is he telling the truth? And then I'll just say, no, like, I'm not joking around. Like, you guys have succeeded in this. He will give you only the truth. And I'll just take that urgency away of like, well, I better like twist his arm a little bit more kind of a thing. And I was like, you don't have to. Like, I'm not going to hide anything. The information that he knows or she knows, like they'll hand it over. Yeah. It would also be fun if they turned into a player character later on. Like if they started following around and now it's like, well, now I've got a lackey. Like he thinks I'm really cool. And so he's going to be like my squire. And then maybe your main character dies and you start playing the villain guy. Like that would be kind of fun. So
we just got a raid from, I like this name, 20 sides to every story. I love that. Cool. There are 20 sides to every story. You're welcome at the dungeon. Yeah. Saturday morning D&D show where 20 is cool.
they need rating on YouTube. That's what's gonna happen.
I love that name. That's really cool. Well, welcome to the show. We're talking about games that we played in Dungeons & Dragons. I'm playing Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and we're talking about prisoners on level 2. The guy's name is, I don't think this is a spoiler, Rex the Hammer.
Oh, okay.
There you
go.
So
that's the prisoner that you guys have taken.
That's the prisoner that we have. For anybody that's played through that, you might recognize a part of what that's going on. For those of you about to play it, you won't know until you get to that and you'll be like, oh, Lucian's group took this guy prisoner. So, but what about Jordan? Jordan's been playing some games lately, Dungeons and Dragons wise. What do you got going for us?
We didn't play Rod of Seven Parts last week, so I don't have anything new to talk about there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we took the week off because LB was gone, and then we were going to do something else, but Brenna was like, let's just have a night off, and then everyone was like, actually, that sounds really good. And it was good for me because I was able to do a bunch of other stuff.
They have 6 parts, though. We're so close.
Yeah, and I really want them to connect those parts and make like the one awesome rod, because man, it's so cool. But they've been very like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea. And I'm like, you guys are so cautious. Just like,
just do it. Go for it.
This is it reminds me, I was playing I think it was, well, actually this is just Jordan in general, but I was playing Numenera, and they would argue about the right thing to go and and then finally I would just be like, my character steps on the trap or like walks in or pulls the handle,
and
like,
then I'm pushing the button.
I was like, no, we got to keep the action going, guys. And my D&D game currently, we are heavy talkers and really trying to figure out what's going on. And there's been a couple times where just to break it up, I will be like, yeah, I like walk through. I like do this, or I don't know. I touch the cursed idol. What happens? I want to know.
Yep.
So yeah, there you go.
That's how my barbarian turned into stone. It was a 20-minute discussion of how to move the idol from the pedestal.
Yeah.
And they still hadn't come up with it. And 20 minutes later, I was just like, all right, my barbarian grabs it.
Yeah.
Oh, you turned to stone.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
That's awesome. See, that's a cool story. But my wild mount game, we were in a big Thunderdome, and I was talking to my dungeon master, and he was saying, like, he's like, yeah, I just kind of wanted to have like a really cool fight. And the fun mechanic of it is that when we tried to take short rests, our bodies would just like twinge. Like there was an energy field that just didn't allow us to take short rests. And so that was kind of fun because midway through these like consecutive fights, we were like, oh, like we got to kind of like, we got to, like we can't. And so it was interesting how, especially a lot of the monk gets a lot of his all of his key points back on a short rest. And so all of a sudden it was like, and we had an epic fight and it was down to the wire. And I was like, so we're in a big battle dome, and I think the monk, the fighter, like a bunch of people had passed or had died. And when they get to 0 hit points, the dome teleports them out. So we can't like revive these people. And we were fighting, and I looked over at one of the other players, and I was just like, or I asked my DM, like, can I dimension door out on the other side of the dome? Is anything holding me in? And he's like, no, yeah, you can totally do that. So I was just going to leave and save myself, because that's a very Josh A. the Wizard kind of thing to do. It's like, well, I don't want to die. Like this is,
I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they convinced me to stay in because they're like, we've almost got this. And we won by the hair of our teeth. And I think I had one spell slot left. Like it was just like, this is all I've got. Magic missile, just damage. That's all I care. But it was a lot of fun. Yep. Really combat heavy game, which we haven't had in a while. So I'm excited. We leveled up to 10. And now Conjuration Wizards, if I cast a Conjuration spell, I can't lose.
That's the good one.
I can't lose concentration on it from taking damage. So that's really fun because now I can kind of have these like semi-permanent pets running around and doing stuff.
Now, in that campaign, are you guys using battle mats and tokens and miniatures to move around? So that one you are getting the tactical. Yeah. You're not doing just the imagination battles.
No. Yeah. And my DM actually has a bunch of terrain pieces and stuff that he has either built or accumulated. So we have like 3D battle spaces. It's really been fun. So
yeah, I agree. Level 10 is the turning point. This is Lord Dave says for sure. What's interesting too to me is like I'm playing a fighter in this latest campaign for the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So I'm getting all my stuff back on short rest, which has been super good because all campaigns before this, I've been playing everything that gets stuff back on long rests. And it's amazing when you get stuff back on short rest, how fun that is all of a sudden. But it's funny to me too, how many players still will blow all of their spell slots in one battle. And we've only been up for an hour since the last long rest we've had. And they're already like, oh guys, I think I need a long rest. And we're looking at them like, dude, you've been awake for an hour. There's no long rest. Stop blowing all your spells. Figure something else out. Yeah. They're using some cantrips here or there or something.
Yeah. It's interesting. And now it's so like you're the wizard that just really has the dagger and you're like, oh, I guess I do this.
I wonder if they'll keep that for 6th edition or when they do eventually update stuff, if they will continue that long rest, short rest dynamic between some classes have short rest and some classes have long rest. I always wondered, because there's always a lot of talk about it.
I wonder if, and obviously I think this will be an optional rule, but I wonder if it's like you have to have 2 short rests before you're allowed a long rest.
Oh,
you know, like I always thought that would be an interesting mechanic, and that doesn't necessarily make sense. But when again, going back to Hot Springs Island, it was like the perfect game. I had these poker chips, and they were blue, yellow, red, blue or something. I don't know. They stood for, you had 2 blue chips for night, and they were 4-hour chips. And then you had a morning chip and an afternoon and an evening chip. And if they wanted to take a long rest, they could, but I had to roll for random encounters every chip. So they all of a sudden they learned really
and they'd
quickly.
have to hand you the chips, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're like, we're long rest, so here's our 2 blue
Yeah,
chips.
so here's 2.
Here's
Well,
my
now I
2
got to roll
rolls.
twice to
I
see if
like
we're
it.
doing this.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it really encouraged them to be like, well, it's still early. Like, look at the chips. Like, it's still early.
Yeah.
I guess we'll explore. But some of them would be like, I don't have any spell slots. And it's like, yeah, but it's still really early. Like, we could either explore or we could sit here and he just throws monsters at us, maybe. And that was a fun mechanic. So, and that was not unique as in, sorry, not unique as in they came up with it for that game, but it was part of the campaign setting was, please use these poker chips. And I thought that was really cool. And we had a lot of fun with that. So yeah.
Very cool. I like that mechanic. How
Yeah,
have I
it's
never
a
heard
good
you
one.
say that one? That's been forever.
I thought
since-
I have.
I don't know. Maybe I missed it.
Yeah. You got to pay
I like
attention to my games. It's always
I
Lucian,
should.
Lucian.
Oh,
And
big dig. Well, it's always, the PH is silent.
there you
That's
go.
good.
Other than that, I've been working on my Kids on Bikes game as of yesterday, really. Tomorrow, I may
Is
or may
it
not
about
stream.
witches?
I think it's going to be about witches. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I was reading is one of the sorry, and we'll go back. I want it to be about witches because I want to utilize some of the Kids on Brooms magic spell ideas. So the thing I was reading is that all of the students in the school, they remember other kids. Like, hey, Billy was here yesterday. Where is he today? But when they ask the teachers, when they ask their parents, they can't, nobody knows who Billy is. So Billy's just like disappeared and the kids remember, but the adults don't. And then when they flip through the yearbook, Billy's like the slot for Billy's face is there, but Billy's face is gone and it's just black. And they're like, what? And so these kids are getting erased. And I was like, that's a fun hook. I think I'm going to have it be that every 10 or 15 years, these witches come out and they start taking kids and they're using them for something. But nobody in the community remembers because, they're adults or there's a spell on them or something. And so then I think when they go through Billy's locker or his house or something, they're going to find this magic wand that was left by a witch. And then they're going to have to go on the thing. So I think that's going to be the adventure. I just have to plot out a little bit of because it is a one shot, I have to be like, okay, how do I get you from here to here to here so that the game takes 3 hours as opposed to taking 3
and you're going to do
days or
3? You're going to do 4?
Yeah, just because we're playing in the evening, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Is this right on Halloween night you're doing it again this year?
No,
or...
I'm doing it this Friday. It's going to be on the 9th.
Oh, this
But
Friday.
I'm going to try to release it like a week before Halloween or something. So
cool. Podcast form again.
Podcast. And I'll put it on the YouTubes. So
yeah. I like that idea. I like the idea that the adults don't remember, but the kids do, which give them the hook that.
Yeah. And so the kids they're important. Like, why are you here? Yeah, it's a little bit like Hocus Pocus, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah, I just liked the idea of disappearing children and that everyone has to be like, what? And so when they actually catch up to the witches, it's like, oh, and then if they win and reverse all of this, then it's like, oh, well, by the way, and then we can have like a big spell fight at the end with whoever, and instead of a powered character that everybody controls, I like the idea of like whoever has the magic wand gets to do something cool, but they could throw it to somebody else and then they get to use their stats to do something good with the wand. Because how magic works is different types of spells utilize a different stat. So in D&D terms, I could use my wand to cast like a strength-based spell and I use my strength stat, but like the person over here, they're really good at wisdom. And so when they get it, they can only do like wisdom, I don't know, like charmy kind of effects, whereas like the strength-based spell would be like I'm gonna shoot open the door with a beam of light. And I thought that was kind of fun. So everybody gets magic that's kind of personal to their characters of what they're good at, and I thought that would be kind of fun. So we'll see. It's a very creative game. We'll see where the creativity comes in.
And just the idea of that last combat is the kids. I use my turn to do my thing, but then I throw my wand to my buddy, and they're going to do their thing. But how do they come up with that organically without you?
Yeah, that's the problem. I have to figure this out.
How does that organically happen so they know to do that at the last battle that'll work? Oh,
yeah.
That'll be fun.
So tomorrow, during my game prep in the morning, I might not prep Rod of Seven Parts, or I'll just very briefly be like, blah, 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 blah. Let's focus on Kids on Bikes, guys. We've got a very important game coming up. So yeah, we'll see about that. But that's tomorrow on twitch.tv/Jordan with a silent PH in the middle. You can follow me there, and we'll hang out the same time as this show, 9 a.m. Pacific. So
very cool.
And that's our show, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, wrap us
else?
up, Jordan.
Yeah. That's our show. Thank you again.
There it is.
We got the siren. Show's over.
Siren. Show is over. I'll mute it for a sec. Go ahead.
Really excited to have you guys here. Thank you so much for hanging out. We will see you. We've gone a little longer. Yeah. So we'll see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show, where we talk about all the fun Halloween stuff Jordan's going to do on Friday. Take care, everybody. Thank you again. And we'll see you next week. Bye.